I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
Loki, the new Marvel series from Disney Plus, establishes its tone up front. After the God of Mischief exits Avengers Endgame, he finds himself in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, though it's unclear when he finds himself, and the shot reintroducing him, half buried in sand, mirrors a shot of Tony Stark in the original Iron Man. Loki, a former villain and B-player, is finally ready for the spotlight, though glory won't come easy for the Asgardian prince. Before long, the wannabe ruler is confronted by a squadron of time police, led by Wunmi Masaku's Hunter B-15, who simply smacks him in the mouth with her nightstick. Loki falls backward in slow motion, but B-15 steps into frame at regular speed, revealing the incredible temporal power she wields as if it were a mundane everyday task. Take that, glorious purpose. The show's first episode does a couple of things. On one hand, it looks backward and reintroduces us to Loki minutes after the original Avengers film. On the other, it looks forward to the future of the MCU, which hopes to shed its Infinity Stone baggage and petty planetary conquests. That's where the TVA comes in, or the Time Variance Authority. The organisation, designed as something of a cross between the Good Place and the Men in Black, exists out of time and seeks to preserve the established timeline as we've seen it unfold. As Loki is taken into custody, he talks up his own godhood and his plans for domination, but the TVA's office drones couldn't care less. To these cosmic beings, Infinity Stones are disposable paperweights. Whatever grandeur Loki in the MCU once had has now been thoroughly deflated. It's quite funny to watch.
How do you have these?
Oh, we actually got a lot of those. Some of the guys use them as paperweights.
The TVA locates deviations in time and prunes these timeline branches to ensure a singular continuity, or sacred timeline. They're dogmatically beholden to events as dictated by all-powerful the Timekeepers, a trio of godlike beings whose word they take on faith. There is, however, one TVA worker, Owen Wilson's agent Mobius, whose ideas differ from the norm, if only slightly. The comic version of Mobius was based on Marvel Comics editor Mark Gruenwald, whose job involved maintaining continuity, but the show's version of the character is more of an audience stand-in, who both wants to preserve existing events, but also wants to see how this new Loki story will play out. There's a murderous threat lurking elsewhere in time, and Mobius believes Loki could be the key to catching him. Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston have stellar comedic chemistry. The clash between Wilson's straight man nonchalance and Hiddleston's deluded Shakespearean rants make for an amusing two-man routine.
It's funny, for someone born to rule, you sure do lose a lot.
Though it's often broken up by dramatic segments which are far less compelling. These scenes, in which Loki is shown footage of prior Marvel films, brings things to a grinding halt in service of a clip show of prior films. This leads to a moment of self-actualization that lacks real emotional impact, when Loki sits and explains the real reasons for his actions in the past, rather than his actions in the present reflecting his apparent depth of character. The premiere episode is much better at establishing who Loki isn't rather than who he is. At every turn, the TVA treats him as if he doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Judge Ravonna Renslayer, played by Gugu Mbatha Raw, serves this function in particular, by telling him his story isn't even his own. Renslayer doesn't get much screen time, but her flirty dynamic with Mobius briefly hints at a much richer history between the two. Similarly, the TVA's various references to concepts like temporal auras hint at a much wider Marvel universe outside of what we've seen. The show's world building is economic and entertaining, even if its character building doesn't quite rise to that level. Like the majority of the MCU, the show depends largely on dialogue to reveal its characters, rather than visual storytelling. However, other filmmaking elements work wonders, like Natalie Holt's original music, which ranges from compelling to strange, and Kazra Varahani's production design, which adds notable storytelling details to each new TVA office and hallway. By the time the episode ends, the show lays out an exciting dramatic path for future episodes, by coming right out and revealing the series' time-travelling villain, a version of Loki himself. It's a fantastic twist, setting up a story where the Loki of 2012 could potentially come into contact with an even more evil incarnation. Would this meeting reform him somehow, or would it tempt him to further mischief and chaos? That's an interesting note to end on. For everything on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, be sure to stick with IGN.